Once again, my name is Emmanuel Byamukama. I'm the extension plant pathologist at South Dakota State. In this field, we're in a soybean field, and one soybean production constraint that I would like to talk about is the soybean cyst nematode. So the soybean cyst nematode is a very microscopic worm that lives in the soil, and it's attracted to soybean roots, and once it infects soybean roots, it can really cause significant yield losses. And one of the challenges in managing the soybean cyst nematode is that you can have it in a field like this one, but it's hard to see the symptoms caused by this disease. So what happens, most of the growers are not going to do anything because they're not seeing the symptoms, but actually they can be losing yield. Where we've done comparisons between a resistant variety and a susceptible variety, we found as high as 8 bushels per acre that are lost due to the soybean cyst nematode. So do the math, 8 bushels is a lot of money that is lost. And so it's important that we know about the soybean cyst nematode and how this nematode can be managed. First of all, how is it spread? So it's a microscopic worm-like organism, and it lives in the soil. So anything that moves soil is going also to move the soybean cyst nematode if that soil was infested with the nematode. So we talk of soil erosion, we talk of equipment on the farm, we talk of wildlife, like the geese and the deer. If they run through a field, especially if it's muddy, they can carry the nematode from one field to another. But the main culprit for nematode control definitely is going to be soil erosion, where some soil is moved from field to field, but also equipment. In fact, one of the ways we think the nematode was spread to the Midwest, we think it came on equipment that was purchased in the South. So one way to try and minimize contaminating your field is to make sure equipment is cleaned if it is moving from one field to another to avoid the spread of the nematode. But the soybean cyst nematode is pretty widespread in South Dakota, now in 34 counties, spanning mainly the eastern part of the state. But all the counties where we have major soybean growing, we have also found the soybean cyst nematode. So a little bit about the life cycle of the soybean cyst nematode. It's going to survive in the soil as cysts and eggs. One cyst can have up to 300 eggs. And as the soybean is emerging and bringing out roots, the second stage of the nematode, which is called the juvenile stage 2, is actually what infects the root. So it's attracted to the root, and in fact in the lab when we stain the root, this is how it looks like. So this would be the cysts that are already inside the root. And when this juvenile is in the root, it goes to inner parts of the root and feeds and expands. And we have where there is differentiation of the sex. So we have the males that become a worm-like and exit the roots. The females keep feeding, and then they also develop the eggs. In fact, you can see in this picture, all these white dots on the root would be the cyst nematodes that have developed. And so at the end of the season, these will break off the roots and remain in the soil, and again repeat the cycle the next time soybean is grown. So again, soybean cyst nematode, a serious problem in South Dakota. Again, it can cause really severe yield losses. And so of course the question is, how can we, first of all, recognize the problem, and how can we manage this soybean cyst nematode? As I mentioned, it's quite difficult to tell the symptoms in the field. By the time you see the symptoms, you actually have very high numbers of the soybean cyst nematode in your soil. So it's very, very important that we scout, sample the soil and then send it in the lab so it can be tested. That's the most accurate way of knowing if you have soybean cyst nematode. You can examine the roots of soybeans, especially now we are almost at V4 in this soybean field here. And so by this stage, you might be able to see some of the cysts developing on the roots, but it's very hard because these cysts are actually very, very small. They are almost the size of a period at the end of a sentence. So it's not really easy to see them. And sometimes when you uproot the soybean plant, the cysts are going to be on finer, smaller roots, and these usually are stripped off on the soybean plant. So it's very hard to see them in the field. The best, most accurate way is to send your soil in the lab, and then a cyst test can be done on the soil. So one way to do that is to use a soil probe. Some of you, most of the farmers are going to do soil fertility sampling, and that soil can also be used to test for soybean cyst nematode. So a soil probe would be the best. We need between 0 to 8 inches of soil, of the top soil. That's where we're likely to find the nematode. And so you want to go in a soybean field and look for low-lying areas, poor yielding areas along the fence line and field entrances. Those are the locations where you might find the soybean cyst nematode. So then you take your probe and you can aim it at, close to the row of soybean in the root zone, and then you just push the probe as all of you know how to take a soil sample. Right now the soil is hard, but you just get a soil like we're showing here. So you pick 20 of these in an acre, and then in an area of between 10 to 15 acres. So you take 20 of these, again making sure that we're picking from low spot areas and low lying areas or low yielding areas. And we combine all these soil probes, the soil cores, in a bucket, and mix it well, and then just send in the lab about a pint of soil. And that's what we use to check for the soybean cyst nematode, and then we'll give you a report how many cysts are in your soil. So depending on the SCN population, then you would also use different approaches to manage SCN. If we're finding more than 6,000 eggs per 100 cc of soil, we would recommend that you may consider using a combination of resistant varieties as well as a nematicide seed treatment. So nematicide seed treatments can help where the population is high in the soil. Where the population is still lower, so less than 6,000 eggs per 100 cc of soil, then there we need to use resistant varieties. So we have the two common sources of SCN resistance are PI 88788 and then also pecking. Now, most of the varieties that are available are mainly from PI 88788. And so because of that, we've been using this one source, and now the nematodes have adapted to this source of resistance. So we need to be rotating sources of resistance. And luckily now, breeders and soybean seed companies have also developed sources of resistance from picking, and even others are coming on the pipeline. So let's make sure we're rotating between sources of resistance so we avoid having SCN populations that are adapted to one type of resistance. So the second practice we can use to manage soybean cyst nematode is to make sure we're rotating away from soybeans, especially where we have soybean cyst nematode populations that are pretty high. So the more years we have out of soybean, the more we're likely to keep that SCN population down. Including a small grain crop would be really nice, like wheat, like oats, and others would help to reduce that SCN population from increasing each time we plant soybean in the field. As I mentioned, nematicides can help, especially where the SCN population is high in the field. So there are several products now in the market, and some are still oncoming, but the common ones now we have include iLevo, we have Saltro, we have Clariva. So those are the common three types that are used as seed treatments to manage soybean cyst nematode. One last thing we can do to manage soybean cyst nematode is to make sure we do a good job controlling weeds. So some of the weeds we have in soybeans are actually hosts for the nematode as well. So we want to make sure that we're controlling weeds proactively so that these weeds will not continue to be a host for the nematode, hence increasing the nematode in the field. So an example would be pennycress. This is a weed that is common, especially where we have no-till situations. And so pennycress is a good host for soybean cyst nematode. So let's try to be proactive in controlling weeds so that they don't continue to support the soybean cyst nematode even in the absence of soybean. So again, to summarize, the soybean cyst nematode is a small round worm, very microscopic, lives in the soil, and it will be attracted to soybeans, especially when they are young. And once we have soybean infected by this nematode, we can have up to 30% yield loss caused by this nematode. And unfortunately, we don't easily see the symptoms. So the best way to know you have soybean cyst nematode is to sample and send your soil to the SDSU plant diagnostic clinic, and we'll have that soil checked for you. The good thing is that testing for SCN or the soybean cyst nematode is free for South Dakota producers. This is paid off by the South Dakota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. So use the opportunity, send in your soil, and know if you have soybean cyst nematode. If you do, then it's a time for you to start using resistant varieties, or if the numbers are high, also use an nematicide seed treatment.